Welcome to another edition of Development Update. This particular edition, we are down in Jackson Square to talk about some construction that you may have seen that is occurring at the Herring Run, behind Nico's, behind Brady's Package Store, behind the former Newcomb's, which is an important project from an environmental standpoint. Not only does it relate to some flood control infrastructure here in Jackson Square, but important for the habitat of our herring that migrate into Whitman's Pond every year. Joining me is our town engineer, Chip Fontaine, once again, and our program manager, Christine Howe. So just by way of a little background, Jackson Square, which had been prone to flooding for decades, up until the 1970s, leading up to 1970, the state undertook a flood control project. Most of the work occurred up at Iron Hill Street. If you go up there and see a lot of the concrete work and the dam up there, a lot is underground that you don't see. Culvert work that runs along Water Street from Iron Hill and deposits rainwater and runoff here into the Herring Run leading up to the back river. It is somewhat ironic when you look at Jackson Square and this important resource we have here in the Herring Run, and you had a gas station sitting on top of the Herring Run here in the Quincy Oil site. We got the Citgo station across the street, literally sitting on top of the Herring Run. It's culverted underneath that gas station. We have another gas station across the street. We've got a transmission shop. We've got a house on a septic system. We've got the dry cleaners. God knows what used to emanate from a dry cleaning plant. So you got all this commercial activity that deals in certain hazardous material that sits on top of this resource, and we're trying to improve things that way too. But one of the improvements that we're undertaking now is this particular project. So the state undertook its flood control project. It was a major project. Aside from the work up at Iron Hill Street, there is a flood control gate that is adjacent to the Herring Run down here where they kind of merge together. The problem being that herring get confused. They want to run upstream, and instead of going up to Whitman's Pond, they get confused and go up inside the flood control project. We're going to be joined a little later by one of our herring wardens, George Loring, who can talk more on that, but it does result in a fish kill. The gate itself has been problematic and has not been functioning properly at times through the years. DPW has tried to stay on top of that and has done a good job along with our Herring Run wardens. So this is something that was on my radar screen as a legislator. I can remember a meeting we had on site here literally 21 years ago, where we had the Commissioner of Department of Environmental Management down here. We had the Commissioner of Fisheries and Wildlife down here, different folks from that department that were aware of this problem. They were concerned about the species. We talked about funding. Part of the problem we had is we didn't see the town really prioritize it on their end at that time. I know it was a significant project in the eyes of the engineering department when Chip joined us 25 years ago, or joined the town 25 years ago. So finally, when we came in, we had the good fortune back in 2016 of having some free cash that we could use to put towards some of the town's capital projects. We decided that this one that was long overdue, we put $600,000 forward in free cash. That was either fiscal 16 or 17, I believe, in calendar year 16 when we got sworn in. And subsequent to that, we asked for some assistance through our state legislative delegation, and Representative Mariano, Representative Murphy, and Senator O'Connor were successful in getting us a $350,000 earmark. The project total is a little bit less than those combined numbers. Chip's going to talk about that in a minute, but the surplus we have is going to allow us to do a little add-on here with this particular contractor and do some maintenance on the run. There's some infiltration of Phragmites, and we're going to do some dredging a little further upstream from where this particular project is occurring. So that is a quick overview. I probably left a few things out, but with that, we're going to jump over to our town engineer, Chip Fontaine, that's going to talk about a little of the history from his perspective and the importance of this project and some of the problems, and clean up any fake news that I may have put forward.
I think you pretty much nailed it, Mayor. There was a major state overseen and funded project to create this flood control bypass conduit, which was designed in the 60s, constructed in the early 70s. That reconstructed both Whitman's Pond Dam and the Iron Hill Dam and incorporated siphons to allow water to be released from Whitman's Pond at a quicker pace to prevent flooding of the abutting properties. So the outflow from those siphons in Iron Hill Dam were then channeled into a large conduit. I don't know the exact dimensions off the top of my head, but it's somewhere in the order of 30 feet wide, 20 feet high. So it's massive. It came all the way from Iron Hill Dam down Water Street, and we're actually standing right on top of it right now. And where the flood control conduit meets the actual herring run where the fish come in to spawn, subsequent to the original construction, they installed a swinging metal gate to prevent the fish from going up the flood control conduit, from which there is no escape for a herring. And one of the reasons, and our herring warden George may elaborate on this, that the herring tend to want to go that way is because that comes directly from the pond and has no street runoff incorporated into it at all. So the fish can smell the difference between water that has street runoff mixed with it, which is what the actual herring run has all along its length, and the clean water coming from the flood control conduit, which leads them to certain death. So we've known about this problem for a long time. The herring wardens have struggled over the years to keep the gate in place. The DPW, as the mayor said, tried to work with them, and we actually tried to modify the bottom of it to put some stop logs below it to prevent them from going under it. None of those methods really worked very well. So again, as the mayor said, we were finally able to get some town funding combined with some state earmark funds, and got an engineering firm, Gomez and Sullivan, out of New Hampshire, who specialize in this type of river engineering for migrating species. So they came up with a design to remove that metal gate and install what's essentially a concrete dam with a sluice gate. That project is well underway right now. We should hopefully be finishing it up in another month or so, a couple months maybe. And we're hopeful that that will prevent any more herring from being trapped in the flood control conduit. Yes, I do have records. Obviously, I wasn't here then, but I have records of flooding in Jackson Square, which is what that conduit solves. But by solving one problem, they created another for the fish. So now we're solving that problem.
Excellent. It's interesting also that WETC has covered some discussions, the planning discussions that are going on around Jackson Square. And there's a lot of activity. You know, we've got a new owner of the Venetian. There may be some properties that are changing hands down here. There's been a couple of projects that have been floated to the planning department by some people who are willing to invest in Jackson Square. And there may be an opportunity to, as part of the private investment that's being made down here and some zoning discussions that are occurring, there may be an opportunity to make some more improvements in partnership with some of the private investment that may happen down here. As we can't stress enough kind of the folly of the kind of development that went on down here through the years that evolved on top of this resource. I mean, if you look back in time 100 years ago, you know, usually it was industrial activity that gravitated to rivers and waterfronts. You know, we had up on Iron Hill Street factories up there. So that was the evolution, and the evolution is kind of changing where we recognize the importance of this resource and trying to bring it back to life. When we have George Loring on, we're going to talk about what the actual number is that herring that spawn in Whitman's Pond, but the potential is much greater, and it's an important resource for other species of fish that rely on that ecosystem. Christine's going to talk a little bit about how this works from her perspective, the person behind the scenes that's up at Town Hall assisting me on the financial end of this and some of the background on this. There wasn't a direct grant involved in this, but she's had a hand in this project to a certain degree to date. Christine Howe.
Thanks, Mayor. And the mayor and Chip kind of glazed over this part, but the town was predominantly able to kick off this project and really work on it thanks to, in large part, the state earmark funding. So those budget appropriations, there were actually 4 of those. We received one $50,000 budget appropriation and then 3 additional $100,000 appropriations from the state. And the $600,000 in free cash is really a testament to the sound budgeting that the mayor's administration was able to do, and to allocate those funds out of our regular so to speak savings from our operating budget, and just having a capital plan in place, the 5-year capital plan, which allows the town to sort of fund these projects over the course of a series of years and plan and prepare for them. In addition to that, from an asset management and an administrative services perspective, we were able to save some funding through the bid process. So as we procured the project, it did come in under budget, which was beneficial. So we're able to do a little bit more work within the budget without having to worry about cost overruns from that perspective. So in addition to generally Jackson Square, we've been doing a lot of other grant work. The mayor referenced all the sort of non-conforming uses of different gas stations and maybe some of the commercial uses historically. So we've been working with the Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. We received a $50,000 planning and assistance grant to look at redevelopment down here in Jackson Square, and got an additional $25,000 in community compact funding for some zoning and land use work as well. So there's been a comprehensive program we've been doing to look at work at improving the sort of environmental impacts here in Jackson Square, particularly how it affects the herring run. And of course the Back River Trail is connected over here, and we, as part of completing the master plan, received some MassDOT grant funding to build a pedestrian bridge connecting to Lovell Field. So hopefully we'll see that work kicking in soon. So there's been a lot of, from the funding perspective, a lot of money being invested into Jackson Square to improve it. And we've been thankful that we were able to get both state grants, state budgetary earmarks, and some appropriations from state agencies to help do that, along with the town free cash funding.
Thank you, Christine. Appreciate the overall update in the square. And with us is George Loring, one of our herring run wardens, who's been at this a long time, my old friend, who actually took the only official campaign portrait I ever had in 25 years. He made me look good back then. You've been at this for how long, George?
32 years.
32 years. So you know a lot of the history here, and why don't you start by just kind of giving us your frustrations on what the problem down here was from your perspective as one of the guys that's down in the water and monitors the run every year. And I think we're talking lately, about 400,000 herring migrating up into the pond? Am my
not
number
that
off?
much lately.
Not that much lately.
The last few years it's been a little less than that, in the upper 2s into the 300,000s.
So when was it? I know 400 stands out of my mind. What year did we hit?
That could have been 5 years ago.
5 years ago. And what's the potential for this place?
Well, one year we had over 800,000.
Okay.
It was an excellent year up and down the East Coast. Since then, there's overfishing and pollution and habitat loss, and all the runs up and down the East Coast have been diminishing to the point where Marine Fisheries put a moratorium on the catching of herring.
So the problem isn't just here in Weymouth, it's all along the East Coast.
That's
but
true.
Some of the impediments we have here, we can talk about, which is, directly relating to why we're doing this work.
Well, the flood control was the biggest problem. That gate, ever since I got here, has been a problem. We've fixed it with sandbags and chicken wire, boards. We've tried putting fake stripers down there to dissuade the herring from going, but that's the way they want to go because it's pure Whitman's water. Like the mayor was mentioning, the river, or Chip was anyway, has Elias Pond water and all the storm drains that drain into it, which taints the water, and the fish would rather have the pure water. So we've been fighting this flood control for years and years, and at one point we lost 30,000 fish because of the oxygen levels dropped so much because there were so many fish in there. So anyway, this is a long overdue project. I've been fighting for it for a long time, and finally the mayor has come across, thank you very much, sir,
Well, it was on our radar screen as it was yours. You know, and
Yeah, we talked about it when you were senator.
Yep, and we had the state queued up on a number of occasions to help out. We just needed that local impetus that, you know, I guess wasn't there at times, and we obviously had other pressing capital needs here in town.
Of course.
But we're glad we're able to finally get to do that. Why don't you talk about what they're actually doing? Because you're down here every day, and I guess you guys have been providing them some perspective along the way too, and some guidance, right?
Yes, we have a meeting every Wednesday and talk about the project and what's been happening and what's going to happen. When they first got here, they of course set up and got everything ready and got down there and took out the flood control gate. One of the first things they did, and boy was that was a banner day to see that happening. They just pulled it right out in one piece. It was great. Then they had to dig down into the substrate and remove all the debris, getting it ready for the concrete pad that they just poured last week. And now they put subpiles in, and now they got the rebar for the wall already up, and they're still working on that, and hopefully the end of the week they'll be putting in more concrete. There's a new gate. We can control the amount of water coming out of the flood control when the herring aren't here, because a lot of American eels go up in the tunnel, the smelt, even some sea-run trout from what I've seen. So we'd be able to accommodate all the different critters that enjoy this area.
So I had a discussion with Mary Ellen Schloss, who is our conservation officer, about a week and a half ago. When I was down here looking at the work, I noticed all the invasive stuff that's kind of jamming up the run up here, the Phragmites and everything else, and I asked her about that, and she then went back to you guys to talk about timing. And the good news that I got literally today coming down here from Chip that I wasn't even aware of until I got down here today was that we're able to do that in conjunction with this work now. You guys green lighted that dredging that will clean all that mess out right now. There was some discussion on having to wait until some of the herring that's still up in the pond migrate out. You're able to address that. Why don't you talk about, and we're very lucky that we got a little money left over. Good work, Chip. Usually we're looking at overruns, right? But now we have a surplus. So we're going to apply that money to do some maintenance further upstream. Why don't you explain what that's about and how that'll benefit the herring?
Excellent. The middle pool behind the Venetian is just keeps filling in every year because all the storm drains run into the herring run. And in the wintertime when they're putting sand down, of course, it's got to go somewhere, and that's where it goes. And slowly it gets deeper and deeper to the point where we have to dredge it out. Right now there's a ton of cat nine tails and duckweed and all sorts of things we don't want in there, which makes it a less area for the herring to rest on their way up to the pond. Over here at the top of the ladder, there's a bunch of Sphagmites, as the mayor had said, and also cattails that are choking up the river at that point, and that's getting deep too. And if we don't take care of it, it's going to get to the point where the herring won't be able to even get up over the ladder. So this is a good thing. And,
so you mentioned runoff from the storm drains and sand, things like that.
Yes.
Are there other contributing factors like maybe, chemicals that are used in lawns? And
definitely.
So it's a constant multi-front battle for you guys.
Yes, the people that live around the rivers and the ponds like to have their lawns looking nice, and consequently they use the fertilizers which enhance the weed growth. So those are the things that we try to address, get people to use more organic types of fertilizers instead of the chemical ones. That'd go a long way in helping the pond too.
Great. Well, as we wrap up this segment of Development Update, I just want to give a shout out to not only George, but Phil and all of the folks who help you out. And maybe this is an opportunity to mention what the herring run wardens do. And, you guys have been at it for a long time, and, I don't want to involve any ageism here, but you could you could use some new blood joining
Yes,
you
we
along the
could.
way, right? You want to give a pitch? If
Aye.
anyone's interested in helping
Love
you
to give
guys
a
out,
pitch.
now's an opportunity.
Each year, it's not just when the herring are here, which is about a couple of months from the end of April into June, but all year round. Like right now, we've been topping off the ladders over here, smoothing them out because the herring coming up lose a lot of scales right away, which isn't good for them. They can get diseases and die from that. And just digging out this and that, replacing the boards at Iron Hill and up at Whitman's Pond. All the baffles, they rot out. They had to be replaced. There's lots of debris. Most of the time we have a cleanup the first Saturday in April. Unfortunately this year, because of the pandemic, we're unable to do that, but it was a pretty mild winter, so we lucked out. But like the mayor said, we're getting kind of long in the tooth, and we could use some help.
So if you're interested in helping out the herring run wardens, you can call the mayor's office.
Thank you.
I want to thank everyone for tuning in as you drive through Jackson Square and you see the activity here. Now you'll know what was going on, and expect a lot more activity in Jackson Square for the better. There's a lot of stuff in the pipeline, so to speak, and we're excited about it. So this is kind of the new frontier down here. And we'll see you at the next edition of Development Update. Thank you.